Welcome to Ncba's Cattlemen'S Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cattlemen'S Call podcast. Lane Nordland with you here today, and tell you what, it has been busy at the home place in Montana. Between haying, getting cattle contracted, and of course just keeping cattle out in the countryside and dealing with some drought as well. Been a very, very busy time, and it's a busy time for all producers out in the countryside. And it's always important for folks to take care of themselves no matter how busy they are. It seems that our priorities are taking care of our families and our operations, but today we're going to focus a little more on making sure that you are taking care of yourself as well and that you're feeling the best that you can out in the countryside. And I am excited to be joined today by Rachel O'Grady with the MSK Guide based out of Arizona. And we'll get into what MSK Guide is. But first, welcome to the podcast. This is your first time joining us.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
And we're recording this conversation during the summer business meeting in San Diego, California, and you and your husband drove over. How was that drive coming over from Arizona to the metropolitan of San Diego?
You know, you start to really appreciate your little niche, your little nest until you break out into the real world and hit the California freeways. You realize it puts a lot of things into perspective, but smooth nonetheless.
Well, I was driving in Denver last week and we went down for a wedding and I get a little nervous driving around Denver, but I don't want to drive down here. I'll stick with my Ubers.
Yeah. In hindsight, that probably may have added a few more years onto our marriage, but we made it.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us here today. And as I previewed, producers need to take care of themselves, and we all have aches and pains. I just so I can wear my cowboy hat and say I'm a cowboy, I had a heck of a bucking horse wreck here a few days ago, and I'm not feeling the greatest right now. I'm going to be really sore getting up from this, but just getting to the point of when you're not feeling good, you need to try to address it and work towards it. And you've been on a path to help farmers, ranchers, rodeo athletes for quite some time get some relief when it comes to the aches and pains that they have in their joints and their bodies as a whole. And, as we dive into our conversation here today, how did you get on this path of helping people feel the best that they can?
Well, it started, I guess, as a child. I went through my own health crisis, I guess you could call it, a childhood illness that I had, and we can delve a little bit into that. But just with what you said, everybody needs some help. It's how do you access that help? And that's what we are doing at MSK Guide, is to make that process easier and more streamlined for those who sacrifice their bodies from young ages to keep America moving. So when I was 10, I started to fall and trip, and everybody kind of thought, Rach is a little bit clumsy. Nobody really read into it that deeply until my mom looked out the window as I was getting on the school bus, and I was struggling like I was 90. I could not get up the school bus steps. So she came to the school, she took me out, and immediately to the pediatrician, and he watched me walk, and he said, I don't know what this is, but her gait is not normal, and we have to get her to the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. That's where I'm born and raised, Philadelphia, New Jersey area. So we left the pediatrician, and that night I was gathering all my things to go to the hospital. I thought it was going to be a short in and out, and I fell down, and that was it. I could not get back up. So my dad carried me down the steps into the car, got into the hospital, and just that quick, like by the few hours later, I was almost completely quadriplegic. Could not lift my arms, couldn't feel my feet, and nobody knew what was going on. I mean, this was 1985, so medical science was not as far along even then as it is now. So nobody knew what was going on. It was happening very quickly. And after numerous tests, they still didn't know. So now we're waiting for the neurologist to come in. We were all like very anxious for this doctor to come in. He's going to be the one that's going to tell us what's going on. And he came in and he said, after a spinal tap and after a lot of these different tests, he said, we don't know, it's Guillain-Barré syndrome. We don't know if Rachel will ever walk again. We don't know how far down this rabbit hole we're going to get with her debility. And in hindsight, I look back at that and I think, he was just being honest. But he was so dry and so cold that those words just rung in my head. We don't know if she's ever going to walk again. It was news that nobody wants to hear, because there was like zero hope in those words. Until he said one thing. He said, we don't know how far down the rabbit hole we're going to get here with this, but I can tell you that Guillain-Barré syndrome is reversible. And that word I hung on to because I thought, okay, it's reversible. That means that there is hope, that I am going to make a turn.
So, Rachel, when you heard those words that this is reversible, hope comes into that equation too. And then thinking about what the possibilities were. What were those conversations like then, looking ahead and saying, gosh darn, this can be a long path, but let's get this reversed?
Well, I was in a room with 6 other kids, and they all had conditions that were terminal. So I knew that I was already very lucky and blessed that I was going to get better. They unfortunately were not. This was their life for them. So hearing the words, this is reversible, I just knew that I had to do my part, whatever I could, to start to turn this ship around. And it sounds like, oh, so I just made that switch in my mind and turned everything around and everything was smooth sailing from there. But that's not how life is. And you do go down that rabbit hole of darkness, thinking, self-loathing and just depression. And yesterday I was playing kickball, and now today I'm in the hospital and not even able to pick up a fork. Everybody had to do everything for me. And I mean, it was just a very, very humbling experience. And even at 10, you still feel like almost angry, that you have to rely on so many people. So, with the support system that I have incredible parents and brothers, and everybody rallied and gave me what I needed from the emotional side of things, and the therapists and the rehab, and there was no shortcut. I had to just put in the work and start to rebuild some strength in my body. So that was an experience that I don't even talk about that much and haven't spoken about, because I never wanted anybody to look at me like I was, like had a debility, or, oh, why does she kind of drag a leg when she walks, or have a sense of being a victim, or any of that. I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me, because I was able to get and a lot of people aren't. So I felt like, who am I to ever be felt sorry for? So that was a long journey, and what people really don't realize about paralysis and issues like this, they think, oh, you can't feel anything, so you don't have any pain. But that's not true at all. Not with Guillain-Barré syndrome. Your nerve endings are like live wires. So even the wheelchair my feet could not touch the metal on the wheelchair. It was excruciating. Putting a brush in my hair, forget it. I mean, it really put a lot of things into perspective, to say the least. My mom, God bless her, I was not always so pleasant. Pain can bring out a side of us that we don't recognize. So that's a big reason why I feel an empathy toward those that are in pain. It changes the look on your face. It changes your personality. You don't even remember what it's like to just live without it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wearing, and that was I guess subconsciously that always lived in me and has now carried out with my career. Yeah.
So, and I'm glad you bring that up too, because there are so many stresses, particularly for farmers and ranchers. We got the stress of taking care of our families, our livestock, our natural resources, and our bodies as well. And I know so many producers that the last thing they want to do is take time to run into town and work on an ailment or whatnot. But it does wear on you.
Yeah, it does.
And so, how did the journey begin then to get to MSK Guide and the services you're providing? Because what are being delivered to producers?
Yes. Well, the journey began. My father was an engineer of ultrasound equipment, so I have always grown up around ultrasound technology. That was kind of a given. I was going to go down that road. I did try paralegal school, and that didn't work. Didn't work out because I think when you're meant to do something, there's no fighting it, And MSK Guide actually was created to help the farmers and the ranchers. I'll go back just a little bit as to how all that came to be. I live in Cave Creek. Went through a divorce, As soon as the divorce was finalized, I ended up buying a horse. Just what every broke single mom needs to do is get a horse. But I've always loved horses, thanks to my dad. We always had a horse. We were not ranchers. We were from Philadelphia, but always loved horses, and we always had a horse. So when we moved out to Arizona, we used to drive around and say, are there any, let's go try to find some horses that we could pet, some chins we could scratch. As the opportunity presented itself, I ended up buying a horse, kept it at a barn in Cave Creek. And as I was driving to the barn, I looked over and I see this arena going with roping and cowboy hats, and I called my dad and I said, Dad, you're not going to believe what's going on here. I'm picking you up. They're roping cattle here. And I picked him up. We sat there all day. We'd never seen a team roping.
Can you sit through a team roping all day now, though? That's the question.
No, I can't. Yeah. Unless I'm waiting for Tom. I can. But it is a little bit different now. So anyway, I rode back, to the barn where I kept my horse. Was just down the road from Dynamite Arena. And after a few weeks of going down there and watching this, I said to one of the ropers at the barn, Reuben, can you show me how to twirl this lasso? I think I even called it that. He said, if there's anything you want to know about roping, there's one guy in town that'll tell you. Jump in, I'll take you. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to jump in. But I only knew Reuben very briefly, but I jumped in to his pickup. And he drove me over to Mike Beer's roping clinic. And we pulled in, and this horse is flying out of the box. In my mind, this was like the NFR, And he said, come on back Thursday at 4 and I'll give you a lesson. And that night I emailed him and I said, Mike, thanks for your time, but I don't think you realize, this is way over my head. I'm really not even a good writer. And he said, just be here Thursday at 4. So I thought, well, this guy is confident. I'm going to go Thursday at 4. Well, he taught me how to rope the dummy, and fast forward, by the 4th lesson, I turned my first steer, and that was it. The addiction began, and now not only was I, a mom of 2 little girls driving a Prius, I had a team roping addiction. Just like that. It was like, okay, can I come Tuesday? Can I come Wednesday? Can I come Thursday? And I just dump my piggy bank out, over there. And I was still doing ultrasound on a contract basis with different clinics around Phoenix. I would show up, they lined up the patients, and I would leave at the end of the day, and the next day go out and rope, and, like that. Anyway, Tom rode in one day, and I said, whoa, whose horse is that? It was like the ground shook when he roped. And that's how we met, and he knew what I did. And he said, my buddy Rick has a knee problem. Can you take a look at his knee? So I said, okay, we'll have him. I didn't have an office. I didn't have anything. I had just my machine that I would drag with me from office to office. I said, we'll have him come up to Dally Alley, and we'll look at him at the barn. And then it was Rick, and then it was Brian, and then it was AL, and then it was Wallace, and so next thing I knew, I was realizing that these guys needed help. They didn't know what was going on, and within a few minutes after doing an ultrasound, they knew exactly, and they could take that information and at that time, do whatever they were going to do with it. And then simultaneously, as I was working with a physician that I work with now, and I would come in, and every day he'd come in and want to hear what new ideas I had, because I always knew that I was not just going to be a worker, that I was not going to just work for a doctor's office for the rest of my life, because I was always trying to find ways to make things better for the patients. But I had to go up against a lot of resistance. Mm-hmm. It's not that easy, when you're one person with a great idea. Doesn't mean that everybody wants to hear it, at that time. So Dr. Shah, he wanted to hear what I had to say. And he said, line up 2 patients. And I should say that during this time, regenerative medicine was really coming on the scene. I mean, there was things that people were asking for outside of the conventional realm. There was the stem cell side of things, and terms that were now becoming more prevalent and more talked about. But in the beginning, you had to almost convince patients that, no, this isn't a cortisone shot. This isn't, surgery. It's something different. It's using your own body. And that concept, I think, took a little bit of time to appreciate. But now, it's become really a well-known, talked about.
So how did you get to the point of looking at, let's utilize your own body to help make things repair or work a little bit better, say, versus an invasive surgery or opening up your knee or your shoulder? What did that procedure look like when you were first like, hey, this is a path that we could go down in terms of a better option for some folks out there?
Well, we started to realize that the ranchers and the farmers, to this particular group, going in and going under and taking months of downtime means something totally different than somebody that works at a desk. And not that we won't help everybody, but these are the facts. When you use your body every day for your livelihood, you think long and hard about who's going to take over when you're down. And there aren't a plethora of backup options. As I'm sure you realize, it doesn't matter rain or shine, it's 7 days a week. If you do nothing, you have to feed your animals. So I started to realize that this was a very harrowing option for the ranchers and the farmers. And I knew that we were getting patients so much better using their own body, encouraging their own body. I believe that our body is the miracle, that there really is not anything in a vial that you could say, oh, this is a miracle shot. This is a miracle solution. Our body is designed miraculously, and if we can harness that, it's capable of unbelievable things. But yes.
So let's talk about then the actual service with MSK Guide and utilizing the body. What is the process, and what is the solution that you've helped achieve?
Well, the first thing is we have streamlined the accessibility of, number one, getting a clear diagnosis, because the ultrasound allows us to take a look at the body in real time. So you don't have to wait weeks to get an MRI. If you have a shoulder problem and you're in an MRI, you've probably had a few MRIs, I'm guessing.
On my knee. Yep.
Okay. And then what do they tell you? Don't move.
Mm-hmm.
If you move, you're going to skew the image, and we'll have to redo it. With the ultrasound, we are moving the body on purpose. We want to see where that bone meets bone. We want to see how narrow the joint space is, and if the biceps tendon pops in and out of the groove it sits in. It's the only way to see that is in real time. We could do it in about 10 minutes. So in one visit, you can find out what's going on, why you're in pain, and there's different methods that we use to treat these chronic conditions. Some methods come from the patient's body, some come from grafts and other sources, but all are intended to encourage the body to begin healing itself. Mm-hmm. And it is something that takes a little bit of patience. It's not let me get this shot so I can enter the roping by the weekend. It's, I want to preserve my joints and my body for the long haul. How can I do that? And still keep going. So the expectation is very important with regenerative medicine. With our patient base, they want to be able to continue working, maybe roping, doing the things they love to do, but also the things that they have to do. They're not going to take up backpacking up the Himalayas. If they do, that's great, but for the most part, they just want to be able to keep going, not have to go under and put in a prosthetic joint. And then there's always that question mark of, what will it be like then? What if it's not great? Then I'm kind of stuck. So
what is the conversation, and how do you present those options, whether it's you or the doctor that is with MSK? What is it like having those conversations and looking at, well, you might not be up having a knee replacement and going through physical therapy and the months that it takes to do that? What are those conversations and consultations like?
Well, the first thing I do is I speak to every single patient that calls. So there's one day I'll have an assistant. Right now I speak to everyone, and I want to speak to everyone. So I get a good feel for the injury, and we do a full consult over the phone every time first. And they already have an idea as to why they're coming when they come in. And most patients come in from out of state. They'll fly in and out or stay a couple nights. When they get there, the first thing that we do is to evaluate their condition, evaluate their joint, so that we know what option is going to fit them best. And then they'll speak to Dr. Shaw, who is a double-boarded interventional pain MD. He did his residency at the Mayo Clinic. So they're getting an hour with a physician, not rushed. We take our time. We are not the conventional experience. And my mission in life is to change that experience, because I don't believe in the multiple dragging out, time-wasting appointments that everybody that's needed to see a doctor or needed a call on the healthcare system can appreciate. And then you feel like you have no answers. So there's nothing that we're going to say that is false, hopish. We're very honest, and we're going to tell you honestly what you can expect. I tell the patients that I speak to over the phone, after hearing what they're dealing with, I tell them kind of, here's what we're going for, and if this is something that it falls in line with what you're trying to achieve, come on out. And they say, yes, I want to keep going. I just want to keep going, And so once they come in, we do the evaluation, and then we treat them right there and then at that time. After the procedure, we ask them to take 10 days from anything aggressive. And usually when I say that, whether it's over the phone, we're going to want you to take a 10-day break from anything aggressive. Either the phone just goes dead, where like, what, 10 days? I haven't taken a 10-day break since I was 6. Mm-hmm. But it's important to be able to do that so that everything can solidify, and it goes by quick.
So when we're looking at, certain cases, maybe it's, knees are bummed up. Maybe there's not a lot of cartilage in there, and they've, done a consultation to do a knee replacement. Maybe it's rotator cuff, whatever it might be. What are those conversations like for the ideal candidate to come in? And are there times where the more, the replacement may be the best option for them? What are those blunt conversations like with some of these patients?
Based on the imaging that we see, every single patient would be a candidate for a total joint replacement if they were in a surgeon's office. So that is just how it is. Nobody that comes to see us is coming in at the first twinge of pain. It's 30, 40 years of throwing dirt on it, and now they can't get on their horse. They have to use a mounting block. They can't swing their leg over. They can't raise their arm, and it's nerve-wracking. So when it comes to, do we treat bone on bone or joints that have been told they need a replacement, that's all we treat, every one of them. And again, the expectation is, I know I'm bone on bone. I know that my knee is sitting bone on bone with zero cartilage. I want to be able to keep riding. And so that is we know exactly what our patients want to do. So we're here to help them do that in a healthy way that's streamlined. I feel like the ranchers and the farmers have been slighted greatly by the healthcare system, and that they're overlooked in general. Nobody appreciates where things come from. Unfortunately, it's just sad, but it's true. And I mean, honestly, when Tom told me he was from South Dakota, to me, that may as well have been like the North Pole. I had never thought about South Dakota as a place where people actually live. And when I went to the ranch for the first time, it pushed everything into perspective. And I saw that this is not Yellowstone. There's not a house full of help down there. It's on the rancher, the farmer, to keep things going. So I don't like the way they're discarded by the healthcare system, and I don't think that that's the way it should be. So yes, this is what I do. My trade is ultrasonography. Our practice is an orthopedic practice specializing in regenerative medicine to to avoid total joint replacement. That's the facts, nuts and bolts. But my drive and my purpose is to change the way healthcare is received and given to our ranchers and farmers.
Well, and just the time that it takes too to set. I mean, I've had frustrations myself when maybe you're just trying to get an appointment because you need to go see a doctor because that cold you've had for 3 weeks hasn't gone away. So you do need to go to urgent care because you can't get in to see your primary care physician. And growing up, my primary care physician was there the day I was born. And he was there till the day I graduated, and he did everything. They filled in the ERs, and that used to be how our small town rural hospitals were.
Yeah.
But then also my grandpa, I mean, he also took blackberry brandy as a cure-all for everything.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I still think blackberry brandy is a good option.
I think it is.
Based on how many times I got him up and going back in the day.
Definitely.
But when you look at that too, it takes time.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that earlier, farmers and ranchers, we're busy and trying to find the time to go in. And you might be 6 months to a year out from seeing a specialist and then going through all the MRIs, going through the consultations, and then going through the surgery, then the recovery, the physical therapy. And as you said, utilizing regenerative healing with this could help these folks stay active and keep going. And so when we're looking at that, I mean, do you have some folks you could name drop or share some examples of that have gone through the process, whether they're living full time down in Phoenix or traveling down for the process?
Yeah, we have, there's just a bunch of, I'm sure, names that everybody would kind of know, but we'll take Rick Steed. He's a roper from Utah, and an excellent roper at that. Rick, if you're listening.
And he's given his blessing to name drop. There's no HIPAA issues here for our audience.
No HIPAA. If anybody that has seen any of our ads, they know Rick is front and center. Yep. His wife had a knee replacement mishap a couple times. She'd been through a couple different surgeries with the same knee. To this day, she's still suffering. It's still not right. So he knew that was not something that he wanted to do, because sometimes it comes out great, the patients are happy, but a majority of the time it may not, and he didn't want to be stuck. So we had a little meeting at the office. I had about 10 people come this years ago, and Rick was one of the guys that came, and he kind of sat there, very. He's not somebody who's just won over easily, but he decided, okay, I'm going to take a chance on this. And he has been going, and his knee is bone on bone, no meniscal cartilage left, nothing, no cushioning in there. And he's been able to continue roping, going on great. He had his shoulder treated also, and then there's Brian Beaver comes to mind. It's an interesting case. He had surgery, and he had a torn up rotator cuff, and he decided to go and have it surgically fixed, which helped him, but he still had issues. He had developed some scar tissue that lodged into some of the soft tissues that the big imaging didn't see, because MRI is not going to pick up the little nuances. And X-ray, that's just what it is. So the ultrasound allows us to look like very, very specifically and superficially and sees things that nothing else will see because of our ability to reflect off of those surfaces.
So it's used more than just seeing what the baby is?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it has
all jokes aside.
It is used in every branch. And just on that note, imagine you use ultrasound to detect spina bifida in an unborn fetus. So the idea that you couldn't see tendons that you can palpate, that you can put your fingers on and feel and your wrist move with clarity, it's preposterous to think that this technology doesn't have that great viability.
A rancher just perked up when they heard the term palpate as well.
Oh,
they
okay.
might think that differently. But so when we're looking at that too, there's a lot of us, that next generation coming on board, and we have friends, family members that are living in pain. What's it like? Let's say they call you up, they make an appointment. What is the travel schedule like? What is that process of when they fly down, go from the airport, come to the office, decide to elect to do this procedure? How many times does the procedure take place? And you mentioned 10 days of kind of taking it easy, but let's just walk us through depending on what part of the body it is, but just a general overview of what that process is like to try and get mom or dad away from the operation for a few days to help them feel good.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the first thing is when they come in, we can help them book a flight where they fly in or drive in. And we have a driver that will pick our patients up at the airport and take them to the office and then take them back, so they don't have to think about what in the heck they do when they land, because it is a lot of deer in the headlights landing in Phoenix. And they come into the office, we do our full consultation, evaluation diagnostically, and treat our patients right at that time. It's one time, and then they could leave that day. A lot of them will just turn right back around and go home. And then once they get home, that's when we want them to just take it easy. You could go out and feed, you can do the things that you have to do, but nothing aggressive.
You don't go on a 10-mile ride.
Yes, yeah, don't go on a 10-mile ride. And, it's like our patients always say, well, how long is this going to last? Well, we're hope a really long time, as long as you don't do anything stupid.
So there could be some folks listening to this saying, this sounds too good to be true. What are the conversations you have with folks that are skeptical about this, or maybe they're in disbelief that there is an option to help them not to have a complete knee replacement and have that ball in your hip? What are those conversations like, and sharing the testimonials, but also just reassuring them that this could be an option that works for them?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, again, the expectation. And we're not salesmen. We are going to tell you very honestly what you can expect, what we feel that your outcome is going to be, and that's up to the patient to decide if that's something that they want to try. The risk is the time, the effort. It's not covered by insurance. And so that's the risk. As far as from a medical risk, it's the same thing as if you were to put a needle through the skin to take blood. That's the risk. So it's something that the patient has to weigh out. Our practice is built on trust. You know how this community is. It's if something works, everybody knows. If something doesn't work, twice the amount of people know, and everybody in the lineup at the team roping is talking about it. So we have built our practice very, to use the word organically, I feel like that's just overused, but that's how it's grown, very, really word of mouth and referral based. So we would say the expectation needs to be realistic. Here's a patient that could not lift his arm up. We had a patient come in December. He was at the NFR. He was getting on the bus to go to the NFR from the hotel, and he was telling his wife, "Oh, my shoulder." He was roping himself that day, World Series, had to draw out. He said, "Oh, my shoulder, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't." And the guy behind him said, "You need to call. I just got back. You need to call MSK Guide." And he called. That was a Tuesday. He came Wednesday morning. He flew in. We treated him. He flew back, was at the NFR that night at the rodeo, and he has done unbelievable. He could not raise his arm. He had a blown out rotator cuff. So that's one example of somebody who had an just unbelievable outcome. He might get a twinge or two. there's nothing, again, I go back to this because there's so many weird, gimmicky things that are circulating. This is real medicine. We are not a gimmicky operation. We don't have a sandwich board out front that says, come in here for some magic injection and be better in 20 minutes. This is your body doing a portion of the work. So are you a heavy smoker? There's things that work against us in life. So it's no different with medicine. If you were to have a knee replacement, same thing. If your health is, is working against you, your recovery time is going to also reflect that.
So if we have a producer that maybe could benefit from this process, but also most likely the folks listening or watching the podcast today, they probably have someone of an older, more experienced generation. I would say more experienced, more well-learned generations ahead of us. What are some ways that they can get in touch with you, or what is that process like, trying to book a consultation or learn more about it, watch more about it? Walk us through that. Say, hey, maybe this might be a good Christmas gift for mom or dad, and send them down to a few days of warm weather if they're from the northern states like where I'm from.
Definitely. Don't want to come now, unless you like to be near the surface of the sun. They can look at our website, which is mskguide.com, and you can just give a call, and I'll talk to everyone that calls, and I'll explain what we do and listen to what they've got going on, and we just set up the appointment, and I help them through everything. So we try to keep it real, I'd say old school in a sense. I think technology is great in a lot of ways, that it has advanced things in our world greatly. But there are certain things that we should just leave as they were. And healthcare and that experience that you have talking to your doctor, actually being able to hash things out, not feel like you're just rushed through, is a lost art. And it's unfortunately hard to find. So we really want to just help our ranchers and farmers not be dragged through the system. And doctors, their hands are tied a lot. Doctors are delegated to by what the insurance companies tell them. And the insurance company is a faceless entity, pretty much, sitting behind a keyboard that's punching in demographics. Oh, Bob Smith, 82-year-old with knee pain, a little bit of high blood pressure. He has these benefits. Okay, here's what Bob gets. You can give him a cortisone shot, but don't give him more than 3. You can give him these pills, or he can go in for surgery. That's it. That's the generic options. They haven't even met Bob. They don't know that Bob still gets on and rides and ropes, and they don't care. Or that he has to get out there and keep his crop going so that he can feed his family in October. They don't think about any of that, and I'm sick of it. And somebody's got to do it. Everybody could say, well, who are you to try to go take this on? I was called to do this, so that's what I'm doing.
Now, Rachel, obviously you went up against resistance to things your whole life, from being diagnosed with something that could have been really an end to a way of life, of being happy, of having the ability to walk, to learning how to back into a box. I know. And turn a steer.
Who knew?
But then obviously on this health journey as well, looking at a regenerative way, what is in store for the future of MSK Guide? What are some of your goals? How can you work to provide this to folks on a larger scale? Do you have any plans here for the short and long term?
Well, one of my goals is happening right now, and that's to work with the National Cattlemen'S Beef Association to get our messaging out to the cattle ranchers that we're here for you, if we can't help you, you will have more clarity after speaking to us. And 9 times out of 10, we can help. We can offer some help non-surgically. The resistance that I've been up against from early on in my career, trying to convince doctors that ultrasound wasn't a great technology to look at a shoulder and look how quick you could do it, and you can go back into the room with the patient quickly and tell them, here's what it is. That was, believe it or not, a resistance in itself. But I do think that resistance kind of hones us in to our path and solidifies our purpose. And so we're here to help. I would love to eventually meet with President Trump. I feel like there is a little bit of a lack of, I'm not going to say concern, but I just don't think it's been a priority to find a healthcare solution for our ranchers and farmers, ways to access care, not just any care, but quality care when you live in rural communities. You kind of run up against a brick wall. Most of our patients will tell us they don't even go to the doctor because they already know what he's going to say. And when I hear that, I feel badly that that's what it's come to, that I don't even want to go to the doctor because I already know what the options are going to be. We had a patient, Dr. Shaw asked, are you diabetic? You know, the basic questions that we ask. And he said, well, I went to the doctor. He told me that I was borderline. And so I never went back. So no, I'm not. And that depicts our patients want to feel better. They actually want to continue working, so we don't think being comfortable in your own body, being able to provide and produce what you're producing for America, that it should be so difficult to find comfort in your own body and to feel good. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated and drawn out and all that. I've thought about putting together an organization to help the farmers and ranchers obtain health care, maybe a group that gets paid in. Don't have to have actual health insurance because most farmers and ranchers are considered self-employed, so they don't have health insurance. They're out there rogue, so when they do need to have surgery, some things are unavoidable. There are surgeries that we need that we can't avoid. So it's having insurance has its place, but in the day-to-day life of keeping our bodies going, it's not always in our favor. Even when we do have it, we're still paying a lot out of pocket. So I've thought about putting together an organization that is like a coalition for the ranchers and the farmers that gets paid into. And when somebody needs care, whether it's a treatment like ours or a surgery for orthopedic issues, it is taken out of that to help. But that's something I'm just, coming up with, But our plans are to just continue getting our messaging out there and to help more of our ranchers and farmers and to put a focus on this community that so desperately needs help to feel better. Not so that they can swing a golf club, which is great. We want them to be able to do that too. But what they're doing every day for the sustainability of our nation deserves recognition.
Well, Rachel, obviously folks who have listened to this or watched this conversation, there's a great resource, MSK Guide online. That's where they can find all the information to get in touch with you and the team, correct?
That's correct. Yes, mskguide.com. And just give a call and we'll talk about what you've got going on and how we can help.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us here today and answering the Cattlemen's Call with us.
Thank you, Lane. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you being with us here today. And again, for all of our friends out there, whether you have aches and pains or other issues going on, always feel free to reach out to professionals out there to make sure that your health and well-being is top of mind. Because to have a successful family, farm, or ranch, you need to be in great shape mentally and physically as well. So again, never be afraid to reach out to those that are willing to help and provide opportunities so you feel better out in the countryside. Again, visit mskguide.com for more of those resources and to get in touch with Rachel and the crew there in Phoenix. With that, friends, thanks for joining us here on the Cattlemen's Call podcast. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, I've been retired for 9 years, so 10 years prior to that, I was having pain at my job and I went to a doctor and they told me at that time that I needed a partial knee replacement. It got worse to the point that I didn't want to walk up to my shop. If I walked, it hurt. Otherwise, I tried to ride my side by side as much as possible. Well, I've never been one that really liked to be cut on. As far as replacing joints, I just don't like the thoughts of cutting my leg off and then trying to splice it back together. So when I heard about the MSK guide, I was very thrilled, and Rick's a good friend of mine. When he suggested it, I looked into it and thought that was for me. You know, you got to give it some time. They said give it at least 3 weeks. The longer it went, the better it started feeling. And I would say today I'm probably 95 to 99% better. But anytime you can get up in the morning and not have your knees hurting, it's a great feeling.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattlemen's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.